the way I think about it. Before, I flew in space, and I represented Canada on spaceship, and I worked within that aerospace field. Today, I still work for my country.
Is it difficult at all in your role to separate the politics from what you do or what you say?
I think in this particular case, I spoke very much like I have as an astronaut, but I'm no longer an astronaut.
Welcome to the kitchen at Rideau Hall. This is where meals are prepared for the Governor General, Rideau Hall employees, and guests of the residence. Everyone from Order of Canada recipients, visiting heads of state, presidents, royalty, and on this day, the Power and Politics crew for our inaugural Power Lunch. This is Julie Payette, a Canadian astronaut who spent more than 25 days in space, an accomplished piano player and chamber choir singer, a certified scuba diver, commercial pilot, multilingual. She's also the 29th Governor General of Canada. But since Payette was sworn in nearly 1 year ago, she has kept a low profile, especially in the media. The Governor General is our first Power Lunch guest. Hi, Your Excellency. Thank you so much for joining us today. It's great to see you.
Pleasure.
I appreciate your time. We're here in the inaugural segment of Power Lunch. It's our first segment, so I thought I'd start off talking about food. And we have this beautiful meal that's being put out here for us that we'll get into a bit later. It's gorgeous. It looks amazing. I don't even know what half the foods are, but you have some really cool food here from space that I'd love to ask you about. Tell me a bit about, first let's talk about this picture, and then we'll go over some of the food that you brought.
On my second flight, I was put in charge of preparing a special meal for the last day where the crew of the space station would be together with the crew of space shuttle just before we left to come back on Earth. So I said, absolutely, I will bring Canadian gastronomy to space. And that's what I did. Of course, we had maple syrup and maple cookies.
Right.
But my crew members, they ate all the maple cookies. If there's no remnant. But what is fun is that I did bring back the bottles. And here is the only surviving bit of maple syrup that we got from that second flight. I had 2 bottles. One got completely consumed, and this one almost. But what is interesting is that because we can't have liquids float in weightlessness in the cabin, we put things in sealed bottles with a little Velcro, so we can put it on the wall. And we have a little tether to the cap, because when we remove the cap, we don't want the cap to go flying somewhere and not find it again. So it's tethered.
Did it take any getting used to? I imagine it took some to eating in space.
It does.
Yeah?
It does.
Did you ever get used to it, I should ask?
Yes, you do. You do. Human beings, they're amazing. They get used to everything. It's just, sometimes it just takes a little time. So that's the reason we have humans in space all the time, is to study and understand better what weightlessness does to the human body, so that one day human beings will be able to go on long voyages and go to another planet, like Mars, something we have not done yet.
Do you think we will?
Yes, we will.
Do you think in our lifetime?
I would suspect so, but it's a complicated endeavor, because Mars and Earth are not on the same orbit. I'm really hoping that because it's so complex and because it's an endeavor that touches us all, that we will do it as many nations together, and that the first person that will set foot on Mars will do it in the name of human beings, not a particular country.
Back on Earth, let me ask you about your current job. Is there anything about the job that you didn't expect that came as a surprise?
Almost everything, I must say, because I came from a very different field. I spent 22 years, 17 of which I lived in the U.S. because I trained for Canada as a Canadian astronaut, but with the NASA Corps, because Canada, we don't have rockets that send people in space, and so we partner with other countries for the transportation part. So the training was being done in Houston, so I spent 17 years in Houston, and then I came here at the request of the Prime Minister of the government, and I did not really know all of the details about this job. I must say I take very seriously the governance aspect. In the position of Governor General, we represent the Crown, which is an institution that is an absolute essential part of the structure of how we run our country.
Do you think you do that a bit differently than your predecessors might have?
Or do you think so? I'm trying very hard to actually fill the shoes of my predecessors. It's really important, is to recognize when people do great things, or when people pursue an initiative, or show enormous generosity or heart or bravery. And I'm very privileged. That's how I feel. I feel very privileged. Every single time a person comes at Rideau Hall at La Citadelle, our second official residence in Quebec City, to receive an honor. It's not about the Governor General, it's about them. And that is really a cool part of the job, I must say.
I want to ask you actually about that, sort of jumping off on that. What do you see as the, I guess, the role of the Governor General? I know you've named the specific roles within the title, but where do you see taking the office, or what do you hope that your legacy in this role is?
Well, that's a big question. Legacy. I don't know. I'm really hoping I'm going to do a great job or a good job. That's what I did as an astronaut. I represent this country before. It's a bit of an extension, the way I think about it. Before, I flew in space, and I represented Canada on spaceship, and I worked within that aerospace field. Today, I still work for my country. I represent Canada, and I continue to do good work. So I don't think about what it is in it for me, but what is, how do I do as good a job?
Did it take any convincing for you to take this job?
That gets an interesting question. Very, very little. Perhaps because I served as a Canadian astronaut for so many years abroad. To me, when your country calls and asks you to serve, there's only one answer. It's yes.
Obviously.
Sometimes there are circumstances, but yes, it's important.
You made a speech that got some criticism for exactly the opposite of what you just said. Sort of this idea that you talked about climate change and religion, and the idea that there was some perception that you were sort of scoffing at people who didn't believe the other side of the science or that kind of thing. How did that affect you at the time, and has it changed your perception or anything you've done since?
It's just like when you're saying, everything evolves, and I evolved too. Mm-hmm. So I learned from lessons, and I think in this particular case, I spoke very much like I have as an astronaut, but I'm no longer an astronaut. So I have to adapt to the position and to the ways of saying that. I mean, in fact, my only point in there is the importance of debate, the importance of verifying, the importance of using critical thinking. This is really the point. And sometimes details are taken out of context. But definitely to me, this is so important that we can debate in a civil, interesting, and learned fashion anything. Because if we all thought the same way or went with the same outlook, then nothing would ever change or nothing would ever move about, and innovation wouldn't exist. So it's a good thing.
What did you learn from that experience?
Well, I learned that you have to be careful about how you say things, but not what you say. I'm still convinced that, I'm sorry to say, the body of evidence shows that the planet is warming up. And it's warming up at a certain rate that is never been seen before in the history of the planet. So we are in a different time, and we have to take that seriously. These are global issues, though. We're not going to solve them in Ottawa, or we're not going to solve them in Paris, or we're not going to solve them in Tokyo. We're going to solve them as a planet.
You also represent the monarchy here in Canada, and there is a lot of conversation, discussion, debate about the relevance of the monarchy and whether it's outdated or needs to be modernized. What are your feelings on that?
That's not for me to decide that. That's for the Canadian people.
Understood.
To decide that.
What's your perspective, I guess?
My perspective is that currently we're a constitutional monarchy, and we've been so for since this country existed. We're a very stable, prosperous, rich, tolerant, and open country. So clearly, somewhere something is happening. We are, and I see that now in my new role, structured in such a way that there is many check and balance throughout what we do. We have two solid chambers. We have elected officials. We have good election systems. We have debates. We have political parties. We have open communication, free press, very important. And we have, at the very top, the Crown, which is the institution that we represent, which at the moment I'm bestowed with the privilege of exercising, and that is the part of the structure of how we govern ourselves. And it's important. If the Canadian people wish to change that system, I think that a lot of debate and a lot of talk about this will be necessary, because the system as it is a very good system.
What's the hardest part of your job?
No time.
No time for yourself, or no time to get it all done?
It's a demanding job, and that is a little more difficult when you have other responsibilities, and we all do at home. So it's the same management every single person everywhere in Canada does. It's the management of the priorities of the family and what's happening at home, and the priorities of the job. But as I mentioned earlier, the priorities of the jobs here are really important for Canada. So it's not about the person. So sometimes the choice is made for me because of what I've said yes to. And that's okay. The same when you're an astronaut, by the way.
Yeah?
Yeah, you don't decide when you launch and
Right.
everything that happens. You're part of a team and of a group and of a direction. And I think you accomplish great things when you all agree on that direction and put effort toward that direction and let go of your personal agenda a little in favor of the team, of the crew.
Has it been an adjustment for your son?
Of course, it's an adjustment. He's a teenager.
That's a hard life anyway.
Yeah, he's a trooper.
That's good. Pluto, a planet, or deserved its demotion?
It never was a planet, so by the time we figured it out, then we took it out the roster. There's many other objects the size of Pluto in the vicinity, but it was so far, our instrument didn't look well. Now they do. So Pluto is actually not alone. It's got a lot of sisters and brothers out there in the Kuiper Belt.
Montreal bagels or Montreal smoked meat?
Both.
Great Big Sea or Celine Dion?
Different styles.
So no choice.
No, I love both. I know, and I took both their music to space. I took food from Canada in space, but I also took CDs from all over the country.
Justin Bieber or Justin Trudeau?
Justin, in general.
Texas barbecue or Quebec poutine?
That's not fair. That's not fair. You see, I spent 17 years in Texas, so we did barbecue in our backyard almost every other day. I still do that in Montreal. Barbecue.
Best part of Ottawa and the worst part of Ottawa?
Weather and weather.
That's the best answer. Favorite restaurant?
I don't have any.
No?
Because I was very, very privileged to grow up in Montreal. There's a lot.
Oh my gosh.
A lot of good Asian restaurants. I love Indian, Vietnamese.
Best thing you ate in space and the grossest thing you ate in space?
Actually, food is really good in space, contrary to what people think. But now I've got to leave you with one last thing.
Okay.
In space, there's an etiquette. There's many little etiquettes in any world, any environment. But in space, when you eat, and when we are eating, and we put our food on, it's not really a table, but we Velcro things, or we put bungees over things, we secure things, otherwise everything floats. Everything in here would float if it were in space. Because of that, sometimes there is pieces of food that start floating. And the etiquette requires that if it is edible, you open your mouth and you eat it. Because if not, that piece of food is going to fly and find itself at the screen in front of the main cabin fan.
Right.
And somebody will have to go and clean this up.
Right.
With the vacuum cleaner, and that's not fun. So the
If
etiquette,
it's coming, you open your mouth.
If it's floating by, you open your mouth and you eat.